Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're trying to manage Kubernetes clusters across a bunch of different clouds, you know the deal. It can get complicated, fast. Today, we're going to break down how a GitOps approach can bring all of that together, turning what feels like chaos into something predictable and totally automated. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the challenge itself. Then, we'll introduce GitOps as the solution and meet the tools that make it all happen. After that, we'll walk through the workflow, see a real-world example, and wrap it all up with why this is such a big deal.
All right, let's dive right in. Before we can really appreciate the elegance of the solution, we've got to get our hands dirty and understand the problem we're actually trying to solve here.
Sound familiar? A lot of us are in this boat. You're trying to use the best of what AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud have to offer. But that means you're suddenly juggling clusters on EKS, AKS, and GKE. And wow, does that add a whole new layer of complexity to your life? You see, each cloud provider has its own way of doing things, its own tools, its own command line interfaces, its own dashboards. When you're deploying everything manually, your teams are forced to follow completely different playbooks for each environment. This is just slow. But worse, it leads to this thing called cluster drift, where your environments get more and more out of sync over time. It's a recipe for human error, and it just doesn't scale. So how do we fix this mess? Well, let me introduce you to the hero of our story, a really powerful model called GitOps. This is all about making a fundamental shift from manual chaos to automated control. You know, the core idea behind GitOps is actually beautiful in its simplicity. All it means is that your Git repository, the same place you store your code, becomes the one and only source of truth. It holds a complete description of exactly how your entire system is supposed to look and behave. And that's the key takeaway right there. You're no longer logging into servers and manually tweaking things. Instead, you just declare the state you want in Git. Think of it as the master blueprint. Then an automated process takes over to make sure reality actually matches that blueprint. Your job changes from being a construction worker to being the architect. Now, of course, this automation doesn't happen by magic. It's all powered by some incredibly clever tools that act as our automated construction crews working around the clock to build exactly what the blueprint describes. In the Kubernetes universe, the big names here are tools like Argo CD and Flux. These are what we call GitOps operators, and you install them right inside your Kubernetes clusters. Their entire job is to just sit there and constantly watch your Git repository, playing a perpetual game of spot the difference between the blueprint and what's actually running live. Okay, so we've got the blueprint and we've got the crew. Let's see how this all comes together in a seamless automated workflow that connects a developer's keyboard directly to all of your live clusters. It flows just like this. First, a developer pushes a change to Git. A CI pipeline kicks off, building and testing it. And here's the cool part. The GitOps operator inside each cluster notices that the blueprint in Git has changed, so it automatically pulls that change and applies it, bringing every cluster perfectly in sync. Nobody has to SSH in, nobody has to run kube control apply. The system just converges on the truth. Theory is great, but let's make this really concrete. We're going to walk through a super common scenario to see just how powerful and simple this process is in the real world. Okay, imagine this. We need to enable a new feature that's in beta. We want to turn it on everywhere across our entire multi-cloud setup. We're not deploying a whole new application. We're just flipping a single switch in our configuration files. So this right here, this is the only manual step in the whole process. A developer just opens up a YAML file, changes feature flag enabled from false to true, and commits that single line to the Git repo. That's it. Their job is done. And just like that, the magic happens. In a matter of minutes, the GitOps operators in your Amazon, Azure, and Google clusters all see that one-line change. They pull it down, apply it automatically, and poof, the new feature is live, consistently across every single cloud, and not a single person had to log into a dashboard or run a manual command. So let's zoom out a bit. When you pull this all together, what does adopting a declarative model like GitOps really mean for your team? What do you actually get out of it? Well, first, your deployment speed goes through the roof. Second, your systems become way more reliable because you've basically eliminated a whole class of manual errors and configuration drift. Third, security and auditing are just built in. Every single change to your system is a commit in Git, which gives you a perfect reviewable audit trail. And finally, you get what we set out for. Truly consistent multi-cloud management from one single source of truth. You know, this whole shift towards declarative automation, it makes you ask a pretty big question. By treating our infrastructure as code and automating everything, GitOps is pointing towards a future where logging into a production system to manually change something is seen as just wrong. The blueprint becomes everything. So the real question is, are you ready to stop building and start designing?